front end versus back end. You guys ready? There's 3 parts to sending an email. There's the front end domain. You could call that your from address. In email speak, there's weird terminology for things. What they call your from address is something called a friendly from. On the back end of an email is a backend domain, which is actually the sending domain, and you might see that referred to as a via or a mailed by. And then there's also a backend IP, or what would be considered the server, the big frickin' box computer thing. There's miles long in 25,000 square foot warehouses with temperature control and all kinds of stuff. There's a bunch of servers in there, and there's those buildings all over the planet. If you're Google, you don't have those all in one place, right? Because that'd be a huge risk. So there's the from address on the front, that's your friendly from. There's a backend domain and an IP. This is your sending domain. This is the sending server. Notice these two have the word sending in them. So when I say, hey, Lucho, I just sent you an email, I didn't. I pushed a button and I asked it to go to the thing that was going to send the email. I'm just the friendly from. This is the sender. And where that gets important is when we start talking about your domain strategy. So my email address is Kristen at, and then there's my domain, emailtoinbox.com. That's my from domain on the front end. That's how I like to present myself. I'm Kristen, your Huckleberry, if you guys have seen my emails. Kristen at emailtoinbox.com, right? And then there's a sending domain on the back end, which I control because it's my Mailgun account and I created that thing for me. So I'm using reply dot and then emailtoinbox.com as one of my subdomains on the back end. Notice that these two domains are the same. On the front and the back, I have what's called a domain match. This is also an important concept because with most email, that's not the case. So if you see this person, I sent them a calendar invite and they accepted it, and their calendar, which was Zoho calendar, sent this back to me. Well, funny enough, it was from somebody at getsemailsdelivered.com. I thought that was pretty funny. But anyway, so this showed up and it says, be careful with this message. Google's trying to warn me, right? Because they can't verify it actually came from them. Their from address is at getsemaildelivered.com, but it was via sender.zohocalendar.com. This is a domain mismatch. The from domain was this. The sending domain was that. All right? So, and you can see here the mailed by sender.zohocalendar.com. It was via sender.zohocalendar.com. Who sent that email? Was Zoho, right? And so, and we see this a lot. You guys see this a lot, right? You see this all the time in your own email accounts. You see that somebody sent you an email and it says it was from them, but then it says via, m.kajabimail.com, something like that, right? m.activehosted.com, whatever. Okay, it's normal. It's a form of spoofing. So the from address being Kristen at emailtoinbox.com, that doesn't even have to be real. How many knew that? You can actually send an email from mydogspot at somestupiddomain.com and it will send. Okay? Because that's not the sender. That's just a from address. It has to be in an address format. You can't just... Yeah. And you could call it masking. That's another weird term that you hear, right? But you can send it. Now, I guarantee you it's not going to the inbox, okay? Because like some stupid... Oh, I put somestupid.com. I meant to put some stupid domain, but I was tired apparently and forgot to write the word domain. Anyway, that domain doesn't have authentication. There's no DNS records. I haven't set it up. I haven't warmed it up. Like there's nothing happening there, right? So it will send, but it might not go to the place you would like it to go. On the back end, it could still be reply.emailtoinbox.com, even if I sent from mydogspot at somestupiddomain.com. That's a domain mismatch. And like I said, because it's not a real domain, it's not going to go to the inbox. But if it was a real domain on the from, and I was sending from a different domain on the back, it's a domain mismatch. It's a form of spoofing. So the back end, interestingly enough, and this is so important, that's why I put a bunch of stars on there and everything, the back end is the first thing that the receiving email providers look at when you send your email. They're not looking at your from name. They're not looking at your from address. They're looking at the sender. Who's sending it? as you approach the door, you need to make sure that you're making the email gods happy, right? This is what the back end of an email looks like, by the way. Nobody has to look at that because it's not like it's just showing on everybody's screen. You have to dig for it and find it. But there's a lot of stuff in here that tells them whether you're properly set up. It tells them who the sender is or the reply to. It tells them who's actually the from address. It tells them a lot of stuff. There's a lot of code back there. On the front end, you totally control that. You control what your from address is. We all know that. We have email account. You pick your email address, and you're responsible for setting up the domain DNS records properly. Now, if it's just a gmail.com, like kristen@gmail.com, something like that, then obviously you're not setting up DNS records because you don't own gmail.com. They handled that for you. Guess what they're also doing for you? Taking away control. So if you have a free email account, it may be easier because you don't have to do the setup and stuff, but you're losing that game because they're managing some stuff for you, which means they're limiting how much you can send, how fast, and total for 24 hours. Not a business email address. So if you have a free from address and you've connected it with a legitimate SMTP on the back, like Mailgun or SendGrid, you're going to see a lot of your email not get delivered because you're now doing a form of spoofing. Free from address and on the back end, legitimate tool, doesn't look right. On the back end, most email tools control this for you. They use their shared subdomains to send and their servers to do the sending. The shared or the mismatched domains is a form of spoofing. I'm saying I'm this, but I'm actually that. Other people are using those same domains and IPs, not just you. And so now we're going to have to deal with the fact that those domains and those IPs on the back end that we're not controlling, they are now going to get a collective reputation. All those people that are using those domains and IPs, good, bad, or ugly, they help to contribute to whatever the reputation of that back-end domain is, whatever the reputation of that back-end server is. And that reputation, whether you like it or not, is what you're riding on when you show up at the door. So you're either the dude with the gang members that just looked like he rolled out of the ditch, or you're the dude with the suit and tie and the flowers for mama. So here's some examples. The back end of ActiveCampaign. I went and literally copied these right out of the code. The back end of ActiveCampaign, here's an example of I call them sub-subs, like a sub-subdomain, right? Now, think about how many subdomains they have to have to run that show. So S5, it's probably going to be S6, S7, S8, who knows how far that goes. Anyway, that's an ActiveCampaign example. Here's a Keep example. Here's a Kajabi example. And Kajabi usually does kajabimail.net, and then they have like the entire alphabet right here. So it could be A dot, B dot, C dot, it could be any of those. But just know that like this is what's really happening on the back end of the email. And the odd thing is most of us don't realize it. We think we're sending the email. They're sending the email. And hundreds of thousands of other emails are going out on those same assets. And if you got a cold emailer spamming everybody and you're riding off the same subdomain that he's sharing with you, now we're going to have a problem. Yeah, okay. You ever notice in your email account, like in ActiveCampaign or something, you might have like, I have good numbers and then I didn't hit good numbers on that one today for some reason. Maybe it's not your email. Maybe it was the flavor of the day, right? Maybe it was the domain they had you on for that send. Who knows? Now, shared assets also come with other issues. They get blacklisted or blocklisted. The reputation could be good. It could be bad. From one moment to the next, who knows? I used to send calendaring from my Google Calendar until I wised up. Lucho would say, hey, I'd like to schedule a call with you on Tuesday at 2. Awesome. I'd go into my Google Calendar, I'd drag that little spot, and I would put his email address in it, and I'd hit send. And then Google would send him the email that said, you've got an appointment with Kristen. And oh, by the way, here's a reminder later, right? The problem is, I do email for a living, and if Lucho's like, hey, did you send that? And this is a real story, by the way, not Lucho, but someone else. Hey, did you send that invite? Because I didn't get it. I'm like, shoot, can you check your spam? Sure enough, my email to inbox invite was in that person's spam folder, which doesn't look good when it's the first call you're going to have with them, right? And I went, okay, Google, can't trust you. Moving on. I send all my calendaring out of high level now because I control the front and the back. It leads to average results, which is why pretty much anybody I talk to that uses tools where you don't control the back end, 20 to 30% is a pretty average open rate across everybody I talk to. I can almost guess it without even asking them what it is. Let me guess, your opens are probably somewhere in the 20s, maybe up to 30, 31, something like that. And yeah, how'd you know? You have no visibility. You don't know what the domain reputation of those backend domains are, or the servers, and you don't have any control. So let's say that you find out that the active campaign subdomain, whatever it is, it's on a blacklist somewhere. You just happen to be smart enough to figure that out. What do you get to do about it? Nothing. You can't put in a ticket to active campaign and say, hey, I noticed that this subdomain's on a blacklist. Can you put me on a better one? They don't take tickets on that. And they don't let you hook up your own SMTP either. So now you have a decision to make, right? Okay, so this is basically you handing over the keys. If you're using a tool like that, you're handing over the keys to someone else. You're basically saying, I would like to go from here to there. I want to get my email delivered to the inbox, right? But I'm not going to give you any other instructions other than that. I have no say in the matter. I don't even get to look out the window and be like, shouldn't we be going that way? Right? Just close your eyes, wake up at the other end of that process and go, oh shoot, where am I? Right? So the alternative here is that you actually own your own deliverability. And that means you need to be selective of the tools that you're using and how you're setting them up. So set up your own backend would be what I would recommend. And we've talked a lot in previous sessions about how important it is to own your deliverability, but for the purpose of like really kind of honing in on what we're doing next, if you're taking my advice, you would use a tool that allows you to set up your own SMTP, which would be like Mailgun or SendGrid or Amazon, something like that. Amazon's great, it's just really hard to set up. It's very techy. If you have any concerns about the technical, Amazon would not be the one I would choose because it's way harder to set up and manage. Mailgun and SendGrid are about even. If you're using high level, use Mailgun simply because high level already has a native full API integration with Mailgun, so they talk to each other very well. They know the language back and forth. If you try to hook something like SendGrid up, it's not that SendGrid's bad, it's just that they don't know each other's language. They're not connected fully, right? So there's some things that just won't work. There's some stats you won't see, things like that. So your next steps would be, what domain are you using as your friendly from? You all know your from addresses, right? That shouldn't be too hard. Hopefully no one's sending your marketing from a free email account. Okay? If you're sending from a gmail.com, a yahoo.com, a hotmail.com, a me.com, an iCloud.com, like any of that stuff that's not your domain, we have to stop that immediately. What domain are you using as your sending domain? Now you might not know that. If you're in high level, go into your agency settings and take a look, because you'll be able to see what domain you're sending from. And some people are on Lead Connector in high level and don't realize that they're actually using high level's domains, not their own. So you want to know what domain you're using in the from and what domain you're using as the sending.